In North America, Niagara Falls gets a lot of attention and a lot of marriage proposals, and rightfully so. The scene is vast and beautiful. But there's a much bigger waterfall system south of the equator on the border of Brazil and Argentina, and it's on the Brazilian side that these tourists are getting an extraordinary view of nature's strength and power. These are the Iguazú Falls. The waters there are at their highest level since 2014. An estimated 6.4 million gallons are falling every second, and people are able to get pretty close, but not as close as this footbridge. Something suggests it's a little safer when the waters are a little lower. Anyway, the levels at Iguazú Falls fluctuate dramatically with the amount of rain the region has gotten, and southern Brazil has recently seen a series of storms. Hi, I'm Carl Azus for The World from A to Z. Always good to have you watching. Like many other places on the planet, America has seen an increase in hate as people take sides on the war in the Middle East. It involves the nation of Israel and Hamas, an Islamist militant group that controls the Palestinian territory of Gaza. The current war began after Hamas launched a terrorist attack against Israelis on October 7th. This week, Israel conducted at least 2 strikes on a Palestinian refugee camp in Gaza and said it killed at least 2 Hamas commanders there. The refugee camp is reportedly crowded, and Palestinian health officials say 50 people were killed in the first strike and another 150 were wounded, according to the Reuters news agency. We don't know what the casualties were in the second strike. Israel blames Hamas for endangering civilians by intentionally organizing in civilian areas. But the UN Human Rights Office says it's concerned that Israel's attack on the refugee camp could be considered a war crime. Meantime, hundreds of civilians have been evacuated from Gaza into Egypt, which shares a border with Gaza. The evacuees include citizens and passport holders from other countries, as well as dozens of Palestinians who've been injured. Across the world, there have been protests, rallies, and sometimes violence between those who support the different groups involved in the war. The U.S. is no exception.
From America's top law enforcement and homeland security officials, a frightening assessment of the atmosphere of fear now surrounding the Jewish and Muslim communities in the U.S. since the Israel-Hamas war began on October 7th.
In the days and weeks since, we have responded to an increase in threats against Jewish, Muslim, and Arab American communities and institutions across our country.
Director Wray.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and FBI Director Christopher Wray, in Senate testimony, said the ongoing war has ramped up the threat landscape inside the U.S.
Our most immediate concern is that violent extremists, individuals or small groups, will draw inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks against Americans going about their daily lives.
The top Jewish and Muslim civil rights organizations in the U.S. both report huge spikes in incidents targeting their groups. The Anti-Defamation League says since October 7th, there's been a nearly 400% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in America.
This is like a virus. It's spreading across the country, around the world.
And the Council on American Islamic Relations says complaints of incidents targeting Muslims in the U.S. have been about 3 times higher since October 7th than they were during the same period last year.
There's no way to really give you a sense of the incoming flood of calls.
The FBI director added that amid all the threats, Americans shouldn't panic, but that they should stay vigilant or on guard against danger. According to the latest estimates, just under 2.5% of the U.S. population is Jewish and just over 1% is Muslim. On this date in world history. November 2nd, 1859, American abolitionist John Brown was found guilty of treason, murder, and inciting an insurrection. A couple weeks before that, he'd led a violent raid on an armory in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, hoping to use the weapons there for an anti-slavery revolt. Marines and a local militia ended the raid, and Brown was executed in December of 1859, but his actions deepened American divisions over slavery with the Civil War on the horizon. On November 2nd, 1886, a German inventor named Carl Benz was granted the patent for a new type of vehicle powered by a gas engine. It's widely considered the first automobile. And on this date in 1947, American businessman Howard Hughes got the Spruce Goose into the air. Officially named the H-4 Hercules, the wooden plane was the biggest one ever, and it flew only that one time for a mile. Got some viewers in the Prairie State we want to recognize first today. That's Illinois, the land of Lincoln. And we're excited to see Mrs. Cresswell's class at Red Hill Junior Senior High School. Great to have y'all watching from Bridgeport. And across the Pacific, we come to China, where we're happy to see the students and teachers of the Leighton School. Hello to everyone watching in Shanghai.
A word of knowledge. What is the only mammal that is completely covered by scales? Anteater, armadillo, pangolin, horned lizard. When it comes to totally scaled mammals, there's only one, and it's the pangolin.
According to the International Union for Conservation of Nature, all pangolin species are either vulnerable or endangered. Their name comes from a Malay term meaning roll up or roll over, and that's what they do when they feel threatened. They roll themselves into a ball so their hard outer scales can protect them. But that's not enough to keep them safe from poachers, people who illegally hunt these animals. The keratin that makes up their scales is a sought-after ingredient in traditional Asian medicine. Pangolins are found and poached in the warmer parts of Asia and Africa, and it's in the nation of South Africa that an animal hospital works to rehabilitate pangolins that police find when making a bust on the illegal pangolin trade.
This pangolin was rescued during a police operation against traffickers who prey on the threatened animal for its scales, which are usually sold in Asia. In the hands of poachers, pangolins can spend weeks in captivity. Under-exercised and underfed, they're left weak and traumatised. Lumbi will remain under observation in this veterinary hospital outside Johannesburg, which specialises in the protection of the indigenous species. To avoid an attack by poachers, the address of this facility is kept secret, and they treat all sorts of native wildlife, but the pangolin is the most threatened. Its scales are made of keratin and are mistakenly believed to have medicinal qualities. The species is also poorly understood.
The actual veterinary medicine and rehabilitation process hasn't been well documented at all, and very little is actually known about the African species, our 4 species here in Africa. So the better we can do it and the more we can document, the more we're learning about the species. And don't forget, this is a critically endangered species. We don't know how many pangolins are left on the planet.
The pangolin is the only mammal with scales, and it lives in the wild in Asia and Africa. It feeds almost exclusively on ants and termites. Here in this reserve, a fresh supply of flying ants makes for a feast. Now fully recovered, Steve the pangolin is preparing for his return to the wild. Under the watchful eye of Gareth, he's out to find food and gain enough weight back to defend himself against predators. Releasing the pangolins is a delicate process, and walks like these are crucial to prepare them for their new lives back where they belong.
Football pep rally recently turned into a homecoming surprise for a 6th grader in Oklahoma. A tiger mascot was there, pumping up the crowd, and wanted to include cheerleader Paisley Clark in a dance-off. But she wasn't having it until the mascot removed his headpiece and revealed it's her dad, Dennis Clark. He'd just come home from serving overseas with the Oklahoma Air National Guard. The girl and the tiger might have both teared up a bit. Paisley's mom, Katie, had helped arrange the whole thing, and the family went on to surprise the 2 youngest kids at their schools. Something a little more in the heartwarming category doesn't really lend itself to puns, so we're going to let those slide for today. We are thankful for the service of Airman Clark and for all the other military dads, moms, and kids. We hope you come back tomorrow as we cover the world from A to Z. I'm Carl Azus.